Luxury SUVs. There's quite a few of them out there on the market, but there aren't that many plug-in hybrid luxury SUVs, like this 2021 BMW X5 45e or this 2021 Volvo XC90 T8 Recharge. So out of these two, which one is best? To find out, let's get the scores up. Let's bring in my twin. Don't interrupt me like how you interrupted me in the last comparison video. Not a word out of you. Okay, and let's go for a drive. Kicking things off in the Volvo, it's a 5-year-old design now, but that doesn't make it any less of a car because this is actually more powerful than the BMW, at least on paper it is. It's rated for 400 horsepower and 472 pound-feet of torque, total system output. However, Volvo has a tendency to fudge their numbers on paper at least, because while this is the more powerful of the two, it doesn't feel that way. What Volvo likes to do is just combine the peak power and torque figures of the gas engine and just add it to the peak power and torque figures of the electric motor, which is powering the back wheels. The gas engine only powers the front wheels. There's no drive shaft in the middle. It's actually the batteries in the middle. But even though this Volvo can hit 60 miles an hour or 96 kilometers an hour in about 5.3 seconds, the BMW can do it in the exact same time. But the BMW weighs a little bit more and it has a little bit less power on paper. So this Volvo, while like I said, on paper it has more power and torque, it just doesn't feel that way from behind the steering wheel. As for the engine itself, it feels a little bit trashy, for lack of a better word. When it does kick in, it's a bit more noisy compared to the BMWs. It's a bit more rough feeling compared to the BMWs, and it feels like it's always straining to pull this much weight. On the other hand, the 2021 BMW X5 45e's engine produces 389 horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque from a 3-liter turbocharged inline-six. As I said in the Volvo, although this X5 is a little bit heavier and has a little bit less power, the 0 to 60 mile an hour time is pretty much identical, 5.3 seconds. But in this BMW, it just feels like it's actually 5.3 seconds. It doesn't feel like fudged numbers. Also, this engine doesn't feel like it's straining. It doesn't sound anywhere as loud unless you really put your foot down and take it all the way up to the red line. And it feels much, much smoother than that 4-cylinder engine. So between the two cars, I'm going to give a point to the BMW for the engine. However, while the Volvo's engine may not be as exciting as the one in the BMW, it is more fuel efficient. The Volvo XC90 Recharge is rated for 9.1 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 8.4 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. The BMW is rated for 12.2 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 10.6 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. As well, because the XC90 has a larger gas tank, albeit by 1 liter, its better overall fuel economy means that it has a longer overall driving range. So for fuel economy, a point to the Volvo. When it comes to electric range, the BMW is rated for 50 kilometers, 50, not 15. But during my time with the BMW, I've noticed that The most that I ever got was about 52 kilometers. So you can actually go pretty darn far in the BMW. As for all-electric range in the Volvo, it has a claimed 29 kilometers. However, during my time with it, the most I ever managed to squeeze out of the batteries was about 32 kilometers. Granted, the electric range is going to vary depending on ambient temperature, whether or not you use climate control, your driving style, whether or not you live in an area that's always flat, whereas right now I live in an area that's very mountainy. So there's a lot of factors that can change that. So you might get more, you might get less. But between the two cars, when it comes to all electric range, point to the BMW, because 50 kilometers is better than what the Volvo can do. On the flip side, because this BMW has a bigger battery and longer range, charging it takes longer. At home, I don't have a level 2 charger. All I just use is the wall socket, 110 volts. And to fully charge up this BMW from 0%, it takes about 15 or 16 hours. By comparison, when I fully charge up the Volvo from 0%, I noticed that it only took about 6 to 7 hours. So for charging time, a point to the Volvo. Of course, one could make the argument that because the Volvo takes less time to charge, it has a better overall electric range. But the average commute from a suburb to a city center is around the 30-kilometer mark, maybe less. So the BMW wouldn't be completely empty of charge. So plug it into a level 2 charger while at work, and it would most likely take just as long as it would take to charge the XC90 from flat. Both of these SUVs have 8-speed automatic transmissions mated to their engines, but the 8-speed in this BMW just feels a little bit better. Shifts are buttery smooth and they are very, very quick. That's not to say that the Volvo's 8-speed isn't good, because it is. It's smooth at shifting gears and relatively quick. But if you want to drive more enthusiastically, the BMW's 8-speed just does a better job of reacting to your inputs. So for the transmission, a point to the BMW. Both SUVs use regenerative braking to not only recharge the batteries slightly, but to also slow themselves down. In the BMW, it has a stronger regen braking mode by default. It's not quite one-pedal driving, but you do slow down quite a bit. In the Volvo, it has less regen braking by default. However, you can switch the gear selector to B, which enables a stronger regen braking mode, just like in the X5. As for the brakes themselves, the BMW has a little bit of an advantage because this particular demo vehicle came equipped with the optional M Sport brake calipers. The 4-piston fixed front calipers provide a firmer feeling brake pedal than the floating caliper design of the XC90. Despite the extra weight of the BMW, it felt better under braking than the Volvo. So point to the X5 for braking. As for handling characteristics in the Volvo, doesn't feel quite as enjoyable to drive compared to the BMW. Steering is precise for sure, but it just doesn't quite have that same feedback. And although the electric motor is in the back, and when you're in pure electric mode, it is technically a rear-wheel drive vehicle, it just doesn't quite feel that way. It still feels like a front-wheel drive biased all-wheel drive system. Taking the X5 around a few corners and you feel that it is a BMW vehicle. Steering is obviously very direct, but it also has a good amount of feedback for the size of the SUV that it is. It's not the same as that X5M competition that I drove a few months ago, but between the two SUVs, if you enjoy a bit of a sporty drive around a twisty road, this is the one you want to be in. So predictably, for handling dynamics, a point to the BMW X5. When it comes to comfort, Both of these luxury SUVs have air suspension and are equipped with 21-inch wheels. So for on-road comfort, they both go over potholes and absorb bumps very, very well. But the difference is in the seats. In the Volvo, they are heated and ventilated and massaging. And in the BMW, the way that it's equipped, it's only heated, but you can get it with ventilation and massaging as well. However, it's the actual shape of the seats that make the difference. In the Volvo, they just feel a bit better contoured to my body than they do in the BMW. So that's the real difference. And because of that, I'm going to give a point to the Volvo for comfort. But while the Volvo offers a better ride, it's the BMW that is overall a quieter vehicle. In electric mode, there's only a hint of wind and road noise at highway speeds that intrudes into the cabin of both SUVs. But when the engines kick in, as I said earlier, the XC90's 2-liter sounds rough and is louder even when accelerating at a moderate pace. The BMW Straight 6 is quieter when accelerating at a moderate pace, and when it does make noise at higher RPMs, it sounds better. So for interior noise, a point to the BMW X5. Let's move on to interior space, and starting things off in the Volvo, there's plenty of it up here in the front as you would expect. I am 6'4", so I am above average in height, and yet I have loads of legroom and plenty of headroom. In the back, well, how is it back there? In the back, it's actually not too bad. My knees are gently rubbing up against the front of the back seat, but it's okay. This Volvo, though, is a little bit different than the BMW because, firstly, it has the optional child booster seat, and these seats move individually of each other, so they can recline and they can slide forward or backwards for more space in the back. Speaking of which, this is a 3-row SUV, whereas in the BMW, because of those batteries, you can't have the 3rd row option. Only on the non-hybrid variants you can have it. So quite a bit of space in the back of the Volvo XC90. Let's move on to the BMW. In the X5, it's the same story as in the XC90. Plenty of space up here in the front. Legroom, headroom, can't complain. One thing to note though is that even though this seat is at its lowest position, I still sit quite high up, so I have very good visibility all around. How is it in the back? Back here, it's actually pretty similar to the Volvo in its 2nd row. My knees are just gently rubbing up against the back of the front seat, but headroom is actually okay. So I have just enough space behind our driving position. These seats don't recline and they don't slide forwards and backwards, and like I said, there is no 3rd row in this X5. But 2nd row, it's okay. So very similar in the 2nd row in this X5 as it is in the XC90. But because the XC90 is available with a 3rd row, there's more interior space in that one. So point to the Volvo for interior space. Predictably, the Volvo also gets a point for cargo capacity because it has more of it behind the 1st and 2nd rows of seats. Furthermore, the BMW's trunk is a bit smaller than the non-hybrid variants of it. About 22.5 liters less cargo capacity in this 45e when compared to the 40i. So the Volvo got points for interior space and cargo capacity, and it's going to get another point for interior materials. The leather on the dashboard and on the seats and on the center console is that little bit nicer here in the Volvo than it is in the BMW. And I also like how Volvo raises the carpet pretty much right up to the top of the center console, so it uses less cheap plastics. And also this wood trim is really nice to the touch and to look at. Of course, the BMW is also available with wood trim, but it just feels much nicer in here than it does in the BMW. So for materials, point to the Volvo. Both of these luxury SUVs can be similarly equipped. Features such as navigation, heated and ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, panoramic sunroof, air suspension, adaptive cruise control with lane centering, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, soft leather upholstery, premium audio systems, head-up display, and so on can be equipped with both vehicles. So for gadgets, I'm going to award a point to each, as they can be similarly equipped. But the biggest difference between the two when it comes down to selecting options is the price you'll have to pay for said options. The 2021 BMW X5 45e xDrive starts at $83,500 Canadian, while the 2021 Volvo XC90 T8 Recharge starts at $77,600 Canadian for the Expression trim. This Inscription trim starts at $88,050 Canadian. At the other end of the spectrum, the X5 can cost up to $108,000 Canadian when fully loaded, whereas the Volvo can cost up to $102,500 Canadian. Of course, it's worth noting that prices and package features differ between Canada and the United States. Also, if you're watching this in the United States, both are eligible for EV rebates. $7,500 for the X5 and $5,500 for the XC90 at the federal level. In Canada, they are not eligible for EV rebates because they cost more than the $55,000 MSRP cap that is set in place by the federal government. So while you can get more rebates on the X5 in America, the Volvo is overall less expensive here in Canada, and thus it gets a point for pricing. While both vehicles can be very similarly equipped with gadgets, it's the infotainment system that sets them apart. If you're new to both Volvo and BMW, I think that the BMW is going to be the easier one to get used to and to learn more quickly than the Volvo system. This one also loads up much more quickly on cold start as opposed to Volvo, which can take upwards of 30 seconds. And while that may not seem like a lot, trust me, 30 seconds on a very cold morning is pretty much a lifetime. As well, the BMW system has wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. In the Volvo, they're still wired. And I also like the 360 cameras in this BMW as opposed to the Volvo. In the Volvo, they look beautiful and they work great, but you can't have the 360 and a forward view or a backwards view at the same time. In the BMW, you can have that. So for the infotainment system, point to the BMW. When it comes to safety, both SUVs can be equipped with all of the latest advanced safety and driver aids. Where they differ, slightly, is with the crash test ratings. Both SUVs received good crash test ratings from the IIHS, but it's the Volvo that received a top safety pick plus thanks to its more adequate headlights. The BMW received a poor rating in that category. So a point to the Volvo for safety. And the final category is warranty, where both are offered with the same new vehicle and powertrain warranties, 4 years or 80,000 kilometers, whichever comes first. But it's the Volvo that edges ahead with a better extended warranty coverage and a 5-year unlimited kilometer roadside assistance, whereas the BMW only offers 4 years and unlimited kilometers roadside assistance. So point to the Volvo for warranty. So the Volvo wins this competition, and overall it is the better family luxury plug-in hybrid SUV. But if you're like me and you do still like a more sporty driving experience, it's the BMW that I would personally pick. However, these two are not the only luxury plug-in hybrids available right now. There's also the Porsche Cayenne E hybrid and the Range Rover Sport plug-in hybrid. Granted, those two are a little bit more expensive starting price wise compared to these two, so just be aware of that. Mercedes-Benz unfortunately does not have a plug-in version of the GLE. Maybe in the future, but most likely they'll just go straight to full electric. However, if you want to know more about both of these vehicles, I wrote a comparison review of them over on my website. You can find that link in the video description. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck, or it'll probably be another pair of SUVs. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.